Update. My dad abandoned me when I was 2 and now wants to meet me. I ended up living in 6 foster homes and faced a lot of abuse after my mom OD'd. Does it make me a horrible person to meet him just to tell him how I grew up? My mom overdosed when I was 4. I was used to her passing out for periods of time, so I just made toast and watched cartoons at first. But on the 3rd day, I got bored and went to play at a playground. Someone became concerned, and next thing you know, they're taking her away and I'm going to stay with some nice people. Well, none of these people were very nice. I could go into details, but let's just say that I was removed from the first few due to abuse. And by the time I was put in a decent home, I wasn't a nice little kid people wanted to adopt anymore. I was too old and an a-hole who hated them, because I knew, in little kid logic, that even though they had red bunk beds and gave me ice cream after dinner, that soon they would be like the rest. I eventually ran away when I was 16. My foster dad got mad at me for going in the fridge without asking, and next thing I know, I'm packing my bags because I figured someone would pay me to do crappy work and wouldn't treat me like trash. I'm 24 now, and my dad friended me on Facebook. We have the same name, and he sent me a long message about how he's gotten older now and thinks I should meet my siblings, etc. I hate him. Maybe I shouldn't, but he left me with a heroin addict and went on about his life. He has a family now? Well, cool. I never had one, not until I grew up and started my own. I honestly think that letting him know I don't want to be his buddy or his son or whatever he thinks he needs would make me feel better. I could stop hating him and resenting him, and load it on him and just move on. I also want to let him know that I lived in an apartment with my dead mom for 3 days, and we didn't have anyone who cared about us enough to come by. I want to show him the burns I have on my arm. I want to let him know that I hid from one of my foster dads every night under my bed, and prayed to a God I no longer believe in, that he would just leave me alone. I want him to know that I never had real birthdays or Christmases, that I wasn't allowed to go in the fridge in most of these places, and in extreme cases, I wasn't even allowed to leave my room unsupervised. Would this be petty and horrible? Should I just ignore him? Edit. I'm not some celebrity success story, but considering my poor placements and the fact that I ran away from the foster system at high school when I was 16, I think it might roughly qualify for ending up a pretty average guy. I'm 24 and work as an electrician. I have an associate's in it. Who would have guessed I'd go to college? No one. I went to school when I was 19 after I got my GED. I'm married with 2 kids. The oldest is 3 and the youngest is 7 months. And I'm a really good dad, which surprised me because I never had one, but I adore my kids. I would walk on fire for them. I'm happy, and I think that blue-collar, middle-class living suits me. I honestly thought I'd end up in prison or something, but instead I found this life. Now for the top comments before reading the update. No dude, unload on the guy. Give it to him like you just described. He needs to know, and you need to unload. He had 2 decades to come get you, and now that you've grown up, it's too late. You don't need him. You don't need to see him, ever. But it will do you so much good just to tell him what he did to you by leaving. Let go of the hate and resentment, and yell and scream and kick over chairs. Also, freaking good job on getting your life together. You should be super proud of yourself. The odds are he left because she was a witch. She wanted a kid, and he might have never known how bad she got, or that Opie was in foster care. All he knows is up to the point of leaving. He may have no details after he left. By all means, tell him everything since he did make contact, but the Opie isn't going to gain much. Maybe he will apologize for not knowing, but he cannot apologize for what the mom did. I don't think it would be good for either one to have a relationship at this point. They called him to see if he had any interest when my mom died. He didn't, and neither did any of his family. He then signed away any rights he had. And what did my mom do? Yeah, she OD'd, but she tried. She fed and clothed me and loved me. She was addicted to a drug and it was a horrible thing, but she loved her son. He walked away, and 22 years later decided to see how life treated me. As a foster mom, first I want to say I'm sorry. I hate hearing that kids get placed in situations just as crappy, and sometimes far worse, than where they are removed from when they should be placed someplace better. Foster care is supposed to provide a place for kids to feel safe and loved, sometimes for the first time ever, and allow for parents to hopefully get their act together so the kids can go home. And if they cannot, well, then they are supposed to provide the kids an opportunity to be adopted. As for telling your father what happened to you and how you grew up, think about it first. Are you wanting to tell him so you can unload and feel better? Are you wanting to tell him because you hope it will make him feel bad? Maybe get an apology? If it's the first reason, I say go for it. You need to do what makes you feel better. And if unloading and maybe even telling him off. He could have found you sooner, especially if he straightened his butt out years ago. He could have. If you're looking to make him feel guilty or get an apology, be prepared for him to not do either. I am not saying he won't, but it's a possibility, and you may feel worse in the long run. That is not what you need, want, nor deserve. Just be careful is all I'm saying, and if you need to talk, PM me. I know there are good places. I stayed in contact with my social worker, and she cried when we met up once and said that I was her worst case because I was such a sweet, adoptable little boy that I got the worst of the lot. And by the time she found a good placement, I was too scared for it to be a good place. Thanks for being a good foster mom. And now for the update. I wrote a message. Is this okay to send? I decided I don't want to come off as bitter or angry, but I don't want him to still have hope of some kind of Hallmark movie ending either. Dear Jack, I'm 24 years old. I am not the little boy who cried when you left. I am a man with a son and daughter of my own. I've never spent more than a weekend away from them. I am a father and a damned good one. I don't need you anymore. Once I needed you. When my mom died, I really could have used a dad. I could have used anybody. When she died, there wasn't even anybody there. No one cared about us. I spent 3 days in that apartment, eating toast and just waiting for her to wake up. And then they called you, because you were my dad. You were 23, young, but not so young really. If you had come and gotten me, you would have had a son. I would have loved you forever. But you didn't. So I went to a bunch of people who didn't love me but liked the check they got with me. It didn't make them treat me well. I have burn marks on my arm, and I still can't spend time in closed and dark spaces after being shut in closets. An afternoon is a long time when you can't count. I didn't count on anybody. I used to pray, the way Mom did with me when I was little. But after praying for someone to come and rescue me long enough, hiding under my bed and praying that my foster dad wouldn't come in and would leave me alone for just one night, I stopped believing in most things. I lived in 7 different homes from 4 to 16, and even the decent ones, I was never family. I didn't have real birthdays or Christmases. I wasn't allowed to go in the fridge and just get food when I was hungry. When I was 16, me and my foster dad got in a fight over a ham sandwich. Boy, what are you doing in our things? And so I left. 16, with nobody to call and $40. I just walked away with a backpack. Anything could have happened to me. But I made it. I'm a man now, and I don't need you. I don't want you to feel bad. I just want you to know why I can't be your son. I'm 24 and have never been anyone's son. I don't know how, and I just don't have it in me. Jackson. Send him that letter. He needs to know that he failed. You did a great job writing this. He already knows, but I'm up for shaming bad parents any day of the week. He already knows and he is contacting him because he feels bad and wants forgiveness. In reality, he is the same egotistical a-hole. Once abandoned his son and now wants peace of mind because he can't sleep. Exactly this. My father's mother abandoned him and my 2 uncles when my dad was 5 and my uncles 3 and 18 months. Then my grandfather died when my dad was 11. That woman wouldn't have anything to do with her 3 sons. So they ended up with some distant relatives and were sort of okay. But she didn't give a damn. Fast forward 20-ish years to when my dad was about 33. She found God and called him out of the blue and said if God can forgive her, so can my dad. He said, GTFO, you crazy witch. She cried and said it was keeping her up at night, blah blah. And his reaction was, what about all the nights I had to comfort my baby brothers? She had nothing except to say how guilty she was now and how hard it is for her. This is also the same woman who out of the blue sent my gay youngest uncle a letter saying he was condemned to hell due to his wicked ways. She hadn't spoken to him since he was 9 up until that letter, as she had heard he was gay and felt it was her motherly duty to protect him. My grandma is a witch. I see my dad once in a few years. I used to be constantly angry about how he has deeply hurt me by enforcing so many things on me, threatening me with clenched fists and red eyes, sending me to school in the middle of the winter while I was very sick, smacking me out of bed with a smirk on his face, sending me to a boarding school, etc. He was there for me, but he wasn't a father to me in many times. I didn't grow up in a safe household, and I remember using my sleep as an escape from reality, which might be the reason why I get incredibly tired when faced with the kind of emotion my dad used to cause in me. To me, it still reads as though you want to hurt your father. Although this is understandable and justified when punishing him is the goal, it might not be so very helpful to anyone. The reasons for deep anger are always very good. Pain can be very deep and powerful. Certainly if this pain comes from your childhood, a phase in your life in which you are most vulnerable and you need caring and love more than any other time of your life. But think about a mental state in which you would abandon your own kids. Think about the confusion, the anger and despair, the helplessness and pain required to do such things. Consider the regrets and the guilt it would cause. The always nagging feeling in the back of one's mind about a son walking around there somewhere. What do you know about the root causes of his behavior? Was he himself abandoned as a child? From what I've heard, my father was mistreated even a lot worse than me. At a certain moment in my life, I learned to see the hurt and lonely child in him, and that made a big difference. You know what's best for you, of course, but have you considered what would be the most courageous, elegant, and healing thing to do for everyone involved? If someone told you a story like your own, what would be the very best advice you could give that person? Again, I don't know you or your father, and I don't know what's best for you. I choose to see my father once in a while, preferably to go for a long walk in silence, just to be with him as the person he is, not the person he was, the person he should or could be. Just me and him, enjoying nature and one another's company, as human beings, without power struggles, without fear or anger, just to be together in an uncomplicated way. It took many years to get there, and it isn't always easy, but it's more than nothing and gives both of us peace of mind. I know how hard this is. I don't want to suggest that my solution is a good one for you as well. All I want to say is that there is always more space than we perceive. Blame and guilt are never useful in any scenario. I wish you all the best, that you may find the strength and wisdom to do the right thing, that you may live happily and be the best dad you can possibly be. Let the pain end in you. Let your family be a new beginning in what is perhaps a long line of pain, passed through the generations. Lots of love from one dad to another. When I was 3 years old, my mom, my sisters, 4 and 6, and I were thrown out of our house at the middle of the night by my father. From that day, we have been through many hardships, including severe poverty, suicide attempts, abuse, etc. We practically lived on the street in a third world country, with nothing and no one to help us, but we made it. Today's my birthday. I became 22 years old. A stranger called congratulating me. He said he is my father and he wants to meet me. This is why I can relate so much to the OP. And this is also why there is not even a cell in my body that could understand a man that calls me a son. Understand why he didn't run after us, why he didn't fight for us, his children. It's okay if he hated our mom, but we were his children, and mom couldn't provide for us while he could, yet he chose not to. You see, when you talk about his confusion and how he was lost, didn't know what to do, it all just makes me angry. Because how freaking hard it is to send money to your starving children. How much thought does it require? What could have been a legit excuse for him to turn away from us for 19 years? So often we almost died in need of his help. Still he never called, never did anything to contact us. Yes, I am hurt, but not because he abandoned us. I have moved on from that pain, but because he dares to call me his son after all this time. I am not his son, and he's nothing more than a stranger to me. So when he called and told me he wanted to meet me, I told him, your son died 19 years ago. The night you threw a helpless infant out. He starved. Last story. My wife wants me to cut contact with the mother of my older children. My ex, 42 female, and I, 44 male, have always maintained good communication for the sake of our 3 kids, 19, 16, and 15. She lives a distance away, so the kids are with me during the school year and with her for many holidays. Despite her distance, she wanted to still be part of important decisions for them, and I have always tried to accommodate that. Currently, we are coordinating the purchase of a vehicle for our youngest on his upcoming 16th birthday. Today, my wife, 31 female, said that after my youngest with my ex turned 16, she doesn't want me to talk to my ex anymore unless it's a dire emergency. I asked why, and she said it's time to begin removing her from our lives. My wife said she is afraid that if I keep contact with her for much longer, it will have an adverse effect on our own kids, 8, 6, and 1, although I wasn't able to quite understand how. She said the kids are now old enough to keep in touch with their mom themselves, and if I continue to talk to her, it's for myself instead of them. I asked what is it specifically about my conversations with my ex she found objectionable, and I gave her my phone to look through my texts. She pointed out several texts where, among discussing logistics for the kids, there are occasional more casual comments like one of us making a joke about our job or mentioning what became of an old friend. These comments are usually tangentially related to what we are discussing about kids, and we always quickly get back on track. My wife says the conversations are like something between two friends, and my ex and I shouldn't be friends. She says she needs boundaries. I ask if we could table the discussion so I could think. I have several concerns. I don't want to upset my kids. I don't want to ruin my good co-parenting relationship. However, I also don't want to upset my wife. I want her to feel comfortable and secure. What should I do? Now for the advice. Whether your wife likes it or not, your ex will always be part of your life. Her not feeling secure is something she needs to work on. Asking you to cut contact to your ex and the mother of your older children is unreasonable. Absolutely. They'll be in contact for the rest of their lives. Graduation, college, marriages, birthdays, weddings, grandchildren, etc. It's so much better for your kids if you all get along. She wants you to choose her over your kids. Is she willing to do the same? What kind of contact is she in with the father of her children? That's a ridiculous request. If you and your current wife break up, would she really be okay with someone else determining how you communicate with your children? Children are forever. There's still school, breakups, weddings, grandbabies, other life events and minutiae that you'll need to discuss. Agreed, your wife needs boundaries, OP, but she's not going to like the ones you should set, which is mainly that your ability to co-parent collegially with your older children's mother is not determined by their age, is not subject to her input, and is more important than her insecurities. She also needs counseling.